Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Mitchell, and this is the Beyond the Table podcast where we talk about real life, real connection, and how to prepare our families for the real issues we all face beyond the table. This is episode 3, and Maryann Graebe is joining me tonight, and we're going to be talking about rhythms. It is going to be an absolutely awesome message, and you don't want to miss it. Let's go. All right, welcome everybody. This is episode 3 of the Beyond the Table podcast, and I have my good friend Maryann Graebe with me today. She is a life coach at Heart Song Life Coaching and has been doing this for over 20 years. Will you tell us just a little bit about yourself, Maryann?
Sure. Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. Like Sarah said, I've been a life coach for about 20 years, and through that time, I have needed it. I call myself a mindset and a life transition coach for good reason. I find that most of women, usually, who I talk with, don't talk to themselves nicely, and their mindset isn't in a good place. It's usually hurting them and not helping them. And so the transition part is just that life changes all the time. With every season, things that we know about and things that we don't know about. And of course, many of you may know that I lost my husband 6 years ago to cancer. And so it was a big life transition. Some are bigger than others. But from that, I feel like God's really given me an opportunity for growth in that. And what do we do in life transition? How do we cope? How do we have joy? How do we keep our rhythm? So that's kind of what I specialize in and what I love to do, and encourage people to keep going.
Yeah, I love Maryann. She was my coach for a time, actually during a big transition as I was transitioning out of children's ministry and into marriage and family ministry. And you just gave me so much wisdom in just kind of the practices that I needed to be being intentional about to make that transition easier. And so one of those things, I don't think we called it this at that point, but what it really was, what were rhythms. Now, I'm not talking about rhythm like percussion instruments and keeping a good beat, or, I don't have any rhythm, I can't dance or whatever. I mean, rhythms like the intentional, regular things that we do as our life ebbs and flows.
Yes. And what we know about rhythms are that they help us in so many ways, just not keeping our life in a consistent order, but it does a lot with our mindset. It does good for physical well-being, spiritual well-being, resilience, all kinds of things that can be really helped by healthy rhythms. And I learned from Sarah through that time about rhythms. I'd never called it rhythms. We talk about habits, we talk about routines, things like that, but I really love the word rhythm because I think you're going to talk about that a little bit, about the difference. But Sarah helped me. Sarah's more of a type A than I am. And so organization, order, things like that come naturally to Sarah, but they don't to everyone. And so this is a great topic. I love it.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that as I started digging into and studying about rhythms that I've learned is that we were created as humans by God to have this drive, I think, for rhythm in our lives. If we think about the way that he created the world and nature has its rhythms, right? There are seasons, there are times of growth, and there's times of dormancy. The tides follow a rhythm. The sunrise and sunset, they follow these rhythms that kind of change. There's a lot of flexibility to them, but there is this natural kind of order. It's not rigid. But it's a very flexible order to the way things are in nature. And so I think that that's an important part of how God created us to be kind of following some of those same rhythms and ebbs and flows that nature does. And you mentioned habits and routines, because I think that those are the words that we talk about and hear about all the time. So what have you noticed as you've kind of dug into this a little bit? What are some of the differences between a habit or a routine and then a rhythm?
I think a rhythm gives us more choice. Routines and habits are more of an obligation. And what I've learned through my mindset coaching is that people like to know they have a choice much better than being obligated to something. It's a human nature to say, I feel better in the driver's seat than having an obligation to do something. Now, there's lots of obligations that we have to do in life, but with rhythms, they flow better if we feel like we're choosing what's great for us and what we can leave out.
Yeah, that's really good. And I mean, we don't say that to say that habits and routines are not important.
Yes.
They are really important. I like to think of habits as these really small, tiny things that we do on like a daily or regular basis. And then routines are like a lot of those habits kind of stacked together. So maybe you have your morning routine or your night routine. But what we don't want to do is get to a place where we're only doing those things just to check the boxes, which is where my personality tends to lean toward, right? So the idea of a rhythm of a morning time, or what my morning rhythm looks like, it just gives it a little bit more space and a little bit more flexibility, where if something doesn't go according to plan, it's not like everything is ruined. For example, this morning, so we have a new puppy, and I am the first person who wakes up at our house. Like, I am 5:30 up, love to have my cup of coffee, just sit in the quiet for a little bit, pull out my Bible, read for a while, and then spend some time in prayer. Well, the puppy wakes up right in the middle of my quiet time every morning. And if I this morning I thought I needed to have this like checkbox mentality, right? And the puppy was up and he was interrupting what I needed to do. I wasn't going to get my prayer time in. And I wish that I could say that I just kind of went with it. I didn't. I got kind of frustrated about it and ended up waking up somebody else to play with the puppy so I could finish praying, because I journal. But I should have been more flexible and just scratched the puppy's back and played with the puppy and prayed while I was playing with the puppy. I still would have done the rhythm. I still would have spent time with God, but I don't know. I just happened to be more rigid about it this morning, like I deserved it or something. But yeah, I don't know. That just came to mind as we were talking about it. That yeah, he interrupted my my morning rhythm.
Well, interestingly enough, I had my grandson, who's 5, spend the night with me last night. My husband's out of town, and we always walk the dogs in the morning. Well, I can't with a 5-year-old.
Right.
And so I had to tell the dogs, we're not going for a walk.
What did they think about that?
They didn't like it. But, we have to go with the flow and do what we need to do in that. Maybe that's beside the point, but yeah.
No, I think that it goes with it because we're talking about how rhythms can be flexible.
Yes.
So we look at what matters most, which is, for me, spending some quiet time with Jesus in the morning and not so much time focused on exactly how that has to look.
Yes.
So it's an elevating the priority over how it's done, maybe. So what are some examples of rhythms in our lives, like just normal day-to-day ones? I know I talked about my morning rhythm.
Well, some new rhythms that I've put into place, actually, because I'm changing up the way that people can schedule with me for life coaching. And I just want to say whenever you can come is fine. But that really messes up my other stuff, right? And so I have a schedule now that they can go on and pick. Like I coach Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday morning. And that's hard for me because I want to be flexible for people, But sometimes we have to say, this is what works best for me to keep my other rhythms in place.
Yeah. That's a really good, it makes me think of a rhythm that's really important to me, which is spending some time at the beginning of each week, time blocking for the week ahead. So actually set aside specific hours of each day during the week to make sure that I'm putting time and intention toward the different areas of my life. So whether it's ministry or bookkeeping for our small business or homeschooling our kids, but actually give them blocks of time. Now, they're not set in stone. Things interrupt them. Again, flexibility is key here. But I take the time at the beginning of the week to say, I'm going to make space for all of these different important things in my life.
Yeah. I think a rhythm for us is we eat together. We choose that intentionally because it's our time to talk.
Yeah.
I look forward to the end of the day because we have a nighttime rhythm. Getting ready for bed and reading or just being together. Sometimes we don't even have to say anything to one another, but it's that I look forward to that time.
Yeah.
Making time for that, being intentional for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've definitely, having 2 kids, we have always from the beginning prioritized our dinner time together. In fact, now that we have a teenager and some nights, we're not home, it's like, wait a minute, you're taking away, our dinner time. And so it starts to look different, but we do prioritize that along with my husband and I make sure that we take time every night, just the 2 of us, even while the kids are awake so that they can see us do it, but take time just to go through our days. What do you need from me? Just kind of check in and make that a priority. And we don't want to wait until they go to bed because we want them to, well, for one, they stay up later than us sometimes or me. But we want them to see that that's a priority, that Justin and I connecting is an important part of the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, kind of to speak into that, because I'm on the other side of the coin now, is when our kids got really busy in high school, we just said, let's pick 3 nights that we're going to do dinner together this week because everyone's busy. They've got their things, but we really tried to get in 3 nights.
Nice.
And so yes, you can be flexible. Speaking, with life transition, just remember there's always options to rhythms.
Yeah.
We can tweak as the seasons bring different things, but we know that having some kind of rhythm is really healthy.
Yeah. We were, you're talking about as the seasons kind of change and as transition happens. Here in Colorado, we have 4 very distinct seasons, and then they kind of jumble all over each other. But for me, one of my biggest fills, one of the things that just really keeps my heart and my head and my mental space in a healthy spot is getting outside every single day for a walk or a run or to ski or to hike. It doesn't really matter what the activity is. And so one of the things for my health and wellness rhythm is that, in the summertime, I'm up and out the door for a run at 6:30 in the morning because it's way too hot in the middle of the day to go for a run. But in the wintertime, I actually shift things around so that I can run in the afternoon when it's, 40 degrees outside instead of 10 because then it's just so hard to breathe. So knowing that, it doesn't have to be the specific thing at a specific time every single day. Although I can see why some people thrive on, if they're trying to just start a brand new habit, just doing it every day at the same time. But then if you miss a day, it can kind of throw you off kilter.
Yes.
A little bit. Yeah. So when I actually back in 2020, in January of 2020, before COVID, I started a book by Rebekah Lyons called Rhythms of Renewal. And in it, she talks about 4 different areas of rhythms: rest, restore, connect, and create. And then she kind of breaks those down into some different ideas. But those are 4 really great ideas and starting places for evaluating the rhythms that you have. Do you make time and space on a regular basis to rest, to do things that restore you? to connect with others, whether it's with your significant other or your kids and your family, or just as important, making time to connect with friends, right? Outside, outside of your husband or your wife. And then to create too. And that was a really surprising one to me, because I think a lot of us don't think of ourselves as creative.
Yeah.
Right? Didn't you said something to me about that?
Yeah.
So when you hear rhythms of creating, what is that? What actually comes to your mind about how you can still fulfill that?
Well, I really think journaling is creative, because I write sometimes what I'm thinking. Sometimes I write prayers. Sometimes I write conversations that I'd like to have, but maybe I'm not sure it's the right time yet. I also really love to plant flowers, and that's creative.
Absolutely.
Whether they make it or not, that's another story, but at least I'm trying.
The tending is a different rhythm.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, because I don't think of myself as an especially creative person either, in the sense of artistic or anything like that. But just knowing that basically the rhythm of create is doing anything where you're using your hands to bring new life to something. So it could be building, it could be for me sometimes planning or creating a new system or creating a new way of organizing something. It's the same thing. It's all creativity. And I think God created us all to be creative, just in different ways. Yeah.
Sure.
So why are these rhythms so important? We talked a little bit about what they are. Why are they so important? Especially, I'd love for you to share a little bit on why they're important during life transition.
Okay. Well, I think in the pandemic, I'm going to talk about that a little bit. What we know is that, mental health issues were on the rise during that, because we were so isolated.
Yep.
And in that time, I was studying, and it could be higher now, but 18% of Americans suffer with anxiety. That's a lot. And so in order to combat that, we need to be connecting.
Yeah.
We need to be talking. We need to be, talking to friends, talking to family, or getting counseling if that's the need. But one thing that I know in life transition is when change is happening, rhythms can help with self-esteem. They can help increase resilience, which is bouncing back in the face of adversity. Having a common rhythm that fills your cup, that makes you feel steady, that makes you feel calm, increases resilience. It enhances and increases motivation. Because if you are consistent with a rhythm, it jumps over to, wow, I can do that. So it gives me motivation to do something else that's maybe not your favorite thing.
Yeah.
But it tells our brain that we can achieve it.
Yeah.
We can do it. Rhythms have huge physical health benefits, whether you're putting exercise into your rhythms. But not only that, we know that it decreases anxiety, that it decreases stress. Again, because you're putting yourself in the driver's seat.
Yep.
Right. And then clear mind, and it gives us better problem solving skills.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because we have created a space to create, to rest.
Yeah.
What was the other?
Restore.
Restore.
And connect. Yeah.
Yeah. So our mind is clearer. We think clearer. And a lot of times, when I'm coaching, I'll say, whether it's a rhythm, whether it's a thought pattern, whether it's an action, is this helping you or is this hurting you? Let's look at that and weigh it. Is it doing what you want it to do?
Yeah.
And so hopefully we can work towards it. It's helping you.
Yeah.
And we'll maximize on that, and let's do that more.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I love that you, I'm laughing because you talked about how it helps with anxiety. And actually in Rebekah Lyons' book, she starts off the book talking about having panic attacks and really dealing with bad anxiety.
Yeah.
But she found that these rhythms were one way to help lower that anxiety.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's the whole book is about being able to deal with anxiety by setting up rhythms. It's so good. I highly, highly recommend it. And then her next book was about resilience. So I just was laughing that you talked about that, because I think that it's the natural overflow when you start to live in rhythm. Like you said, it's almost like, I think about like a boat on rough waters, right? Like it can be tossed around by the waves and all of that, but there is still this like steadiness to it where it's not quite as affected as just a person, out on a little raft or something like that in the water. Because you've got something that's kind of holding you steady through it.
Yeah. I love that. It's being guided.
Yeah, absolutely. And I laugh looking back now. You talked about COVID, and that's right. Like I said, I read that book right before COVID, and it's like God knew you're going to have to figure something out, because I was dealing with pretty I don't want to say severe, but I was definitely noticing that I needed to get some help for some anxiety that I was dealing with. This is before COVID, and so it just, knowing all of that heading into it was such a huge help for me, because I realized these are the things that drain me. These are the things that fill me. I've got to make time for these things that fill my cup and fill my soul. So that I can weather this stuff that is not easy. Yeah.
It does affect us physically. The older I get, the more I realize that. And the older I get, the more I realize how important it is for me to rest, to stop, to be alone. That fills my cup. Also, I love being with people, but I also really like to be alone.
Yeah.
And I didn't used to allow myself to do that. And I do now.
I think that is probably a common thing for a lot of moms. Can you talk a little bit more about that, about what you've noticed growing as you've kind of grown out of being a mom of littles and not letting yourself be alone? Because I think a lot of our listeners are moms and could benefit from hearing about that.
Yeah. Well, what I want to say to all the young moms, I think you are doing the most important job there is in this world. And I love young moms. And what I say, I think the biggest word that we can give young moms is permission. Because when we're caring for littles, day in and day out, we forget to allow ourselves permission to do and give to this. Because we're giving and giving in so many other areas, and it becomes a way of life. And I think I told you after my third child was born, I had postpartum depression, and I went to see a counselor, and it was the most random time. And she said, "Maryann, what do you like to do?" I sat there for 10 minutes. I couldn't think of a thing. And so she really helped me give myself permission to sit on the couch with a cup of coffee and a magazine. And I said, that's not productive. That's not giving anything. That's not doing anything. And she said, exactly. So I just think young moms, allowing yourself to be who you are. Don't lose your identity in the midst of being a great mom.
Yeah. It's so easy to.
Oh, so easy to. But if you're struggling there, if you are feeling like you've lost that, talk to somebody, a friend, a mentor, a life coach.
Yeah. Call Maryann. Set up a schedule on her calendar. On one of her available days. I think that is so important. And I was actually talking to a group of moms today, and they've got almost teenagers now, and they're still saying, I just feel so guilty if I take any time for myself. Even if it would fill me up, I'm so overwhelmed with the guilt from doing it. And I took them or told them about what Jesus says is that we need to love God first, and that after that we're supposed to love others as ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I think that we have misinterpreted that and totally left the ourselves part out. And but we can't love other people well if we don't love ourselves. And loving other people comes from the overflow of that. That is not to say be selfish, demand things. But so how would you walk out that balance of self-care?
So just a couple days ago, I worked with a woman who her children are grown and have all moved on. So she's in life transition, empty nesting, but she's realizing that these adult children have opinions. And she doesn't like it. She's like, they haven't talked to me that way before.
Yeah.
And so she was really struggling with how to talk with her children. So the rhythm that we put into place was to begin journaling. And she decided that she was going to write conversations down with her feelings of things that she wanted to express to one child in particularly. But the key was she was going to start with her feelings, not attacking the other person, but saying how she felt first. And that was a totally new concept for her. But she said, wow, I can use that with my husband and with my other children and with some friends that I'm struggling with. And, so she committed to 3 times a week to journal like this. So I don't know if that's a good example, but that's what we mean about rhythms, right? Is putting into practice things that you're choosing that will work better for you or that you would like to implement, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not like brushing your teeth or doing the dishes or, the things that we do to keep life moving. These are kind of gravy things that are good, that serve us well.
Yeah. I was thinking that my friends Ben and Brittany Serple, who were on episode 1 with me, they talk a lot about a powerful parent is a parent with a plan.
Okay.
And that made me think of this woman who maybe she's actually making a plan by doing this time of journaling and being powerful, and that she's going to come and present her feelings instead of reacting and accusing one of her kids. So that's just a really good rhythm to have, and it builds really good neural pathways for that to become more of her default in the future.
That's really true. What we know about those neural pathways are creating new habits. It's like bushwhacking in the jungle. It's hard work. You've got to take that machete and you've got to bushwhack it and bushwhack it and bushwhack it and practice. But pretty soon, those more positive, encouraging, more helpful thoughts become your norm.
But it takes time and repetition.
It does take time and repetition, just like a rhythm. Learning something new, implementing something new.
Do you have any, I know I have a couple of suggestions for resources. Do you have anything that you've read or anything that you've looked at that you might would recommend for people who want to know more?
Psychology Today is a great website. They have lots and lots of topics. I know that it's not a Christian-based, but they have some really good stuff if you're wanting to learn more about rhythms.
That's awesome.
I haven't read this book that you are talking about, but I'm excited to get it.
So Rebekah Lyons, her book is Rhythms of Renewal, and she actually is really fascinated by the psychology, but also how that affects our lives as Christians. So it is written from a Christian perspective. And she kind of does both. A couple of other good examples are a book called The Intentional Year, and I cannot think of the authors of that, and another one called The Rhythm of Us, which is all about rhythms for a healthy marriage, and I can't think of the author for that one either. But probably one of my favorites for family, since that's what we talk about most on this podcast, is a book called Habits of the Household by Justin Whitmel Earley. And it's about habits, but really like he uses the word habits, but really he's talking about rhythms.
Okay.
And it is fantastic. He talks about how basically all of discipleship happens in our daily rhythms and lives that we live out with our kids and our spouses. And so that's one that I would highly, highly recommend. I'm just so glad. Thank you so much, Maryann, for joining me today. And thank you guys for joining us. And I just hope that this gives you encouragement and peace and something to move forward to as you continue your lives on Beyond the Table.